haven't met yet. I'm the Director of Data Analysis for Special Education for the State Department of Ed. And I manage all of the state and federal reporting, data reporting for our office. And I get to train you guys on how to best report your district data. Before we get started with those details, I do want to share some important notices. So the next few slides cover some of the information that you probably have a lot of questions about. Some of it is not relevant quite yet, but I wanted to give notice to this. And as a just a quick notification, we do have the slides on our website already. If you go to the State Department of Ed website and open Special Education, click on Part B and the data page, we have the slides on the end of year data collection page. Okay, so it's a, you have to click a few buttons to get to that end of year data page, but the slides are already available. So if you want to look at those, or when you're done with this presentation, you can download those, and all of the information is there. Okay, so first notice, until we are otherwise notified, all data collections and submissions continue on the original schedule. So federal files have not been postponed yet. We have to submit several reports this November based on current school year data. So we have to collect current district data for this school year. So end of year data collection will be collected on July 1. So you need to make sure that all of your district data is cleaned and ready for that data collection, just like in previous years. Okay, we do have some changes though for indicators 7, 11, 12, and 13, and I'll go through these in more detail later. But we are going to be monitoring completion and compliance through March 13th. March 13th is that Friday before spring break, when the superintendent sent out information that schools would be closed through the start of April. Okay, so through March 13th, we expect districts to complete all evaluations, IEPs, all of that kind of thing, and to be compliant. After March 13th, anything that should have been completed after March 13th, but you have not yet completed, you will not be liable for that information, okay? You will still report everything through the end of year, and I'll give more information on that as we talk about those individual indicators. A second note before I forget, that's not in the slides, we are borrowing a Zoom account from Curriculum and Instruction, and they have a regularly scheduled meeting at 3 o'clock. So if it seems that we are going to go past 3 o'clock, I know this was scheduled till 3:30, and it's possible that we may go that long, especially if you have a lot of questions. Gary has set up, Gary Hurst here at the department has set up a second Zoom account, and we will switch over to that sometime around 2:45 if we need to. We'll put the link in the chat box. I have it already on one of the slides and so forth. So if we can get done before probably about 2:50, then we will try to do that. Otherwise, we will switch over to that other account, and we'll give more details as we get closer to that time. Okay, but just be aware of that, to finish this off, we may have to change accounts. And we know that that's sticky and complicated. And we're sorry about that, but they had something else going on that we didn't know when we scheduled this the first time. So just to let you guys know that. Okay, a few other notices. A few things about other data collections that are coming up. We are doing our post-secondary outcomes data collection this summer through our contract partner. And they are looking for districts interested in doing their own survey phone calls for exiters from the previous school year. So kiddos who, your high school students who graduated or dropped out after the age of 16, we call them every year, the following year, to see what they're doing after high school. So if you are interested in making those calls for your district, it will increase the amount of data you have about what students are doing post-secondary, and it will help our data too. So if you are interested in doing that, you can email Lori Chestnut or you can email me and we can get you that information about what that would look like. We'd give you contact information and so forth, but we are looking for partners on that who might be interested in doing that this summer. Also, for any students who are graduating this spring, please, please, please update their contact information in the student information system. Have them update their contact information in the SIS, including personal emails. This will help us next summer when we try to contact those students, okay? Every year we have probably 40 to 50% of contact information is bad by the time we try to get a hold of them to find out what they're doing after high school, okay? So that is really important that we have the most up-to-date contact information for them. The PowerPoint is on the end of year data collection page in the special education data section. For child count and settings, a big change. OSEP changed how 5-year-olds are counted last year, okay? So moving forward, a 5-year-old, and this only affects districts in one way. It affects how we report it federally, but for you guys, it will affect districts in one way. 5-year-olds in kindergarten are not going to be reported with the 3 to 5-year-old files any longer. They will be reported with the 6 to 21-year-old files. And what that means is that 5-year-olds in kindergarten will now have an LRE instead of an ECE, okay? So it's very important that on reports and so forth that you look at their LRE instead of their early childhood environment. Only kiddos in preschool need an early childhood environment now. You don't need to complete that for kids in kindergarten if they are 5, okay? It will affect personnel and it will affect the rates of 5 and 6, indicators 5 being LRE, indicator 6, early childhood, and then 7 being the early childhood outcomes. And I'll talk about how that will affect early child outcomes in a second when we get there, okay? But it will show on the child count report that you have this fall, that difference. So in the past, again, this is just a little bit of repetition. In the past, 5-year-olds in kindergarten were reported with the early childhood group. They will now be reported with the school age group. Okay, so 5-year-olds will be split between those two data sets. A 5-year-old in preschool will have an ECE, and again, a 5-year-old in kindergarten will have an LRE. Another change, significant disproportionality. I know that this will make some of you quite happy. Others, it will actually increase your work, okay? But we have changed the thresholds of what designates a district as significantly disproportionate. In the past, we had 2.25 was the threshold for discipline, 2.5 for settings, and 2.6 for identification. Now it is 3.0 for all categories. You have to reach 3.0 in any race category pair for 3 years in a row to be significantly disproportionate. And what that means essentially is that if you are at 3.0 or higher for 3 years in a row, you will be required to set aside 15% of your federal special education funding. And we have no way around that, okay? So in the past, we had those lower thresholds. Now, those lower thresholds will be used to designate at-risk districts, okay? So if you are above those thresholds for 2 years in a row or more, so if you're above those thresholds for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, then you will be required to complete some improvement activities so that you never reach that 3.0. Fortunately, the difference is that you will not be required to set aside funding, okay? So we still are concerned with disproportionality that reaches those intermediate thresholds. We do not think disproportionality at those rates is appropriate, but we also know that changes can be made and things can be improved without requiring the set aside of a full 15%. So we are increasing the threshold for set aside, but there will be things to do in the interim if you meet those intermediate thresholds. And we'll be sending out more information about that later. But we just wanted to make sure you know that that has changed. We will also issue notices in 2 installments. so that you get your child count and settings notification prior to the next year's child count poll, so that you have time to address some of those concerns. Okay. There are still issues there with funding, timelines, and all sorts of stuff, but we are working on those and doing the best we can to address those as we can with OSIP. There are some things in IDEA that we just have no flexibility with, but we are seeing what we can do. Okay. Next, notice with our state systemic improvement plan. So for those of you who knew about this, we had implemented a state systemic improvement plan in Tulsa County, and with some improvement strategies around the state, we are developing a new one. And it will likely focus on the rates of disciplinary removals if we can get OSIP approval for that. We did hold some stakeholder meetings to determine that new SIMR, the state identified measurable result. We will hold more meetings this summer, either online, hopefully in person, crossing fingers, maybe, maybe not, to develop new improvement activities or improvement strategies. So that will include infrastructure improvements, the implementation of evidence-based practices in certain districts, and we will be identifying partners and other things. So be on the lookout for that. We will be sending out more information about that in the next few weeks, month or so also. Okay, those are all the updates, data updates I have at this point. So we will move on to the end of year training. Okay, the first few slides are just an overview of some of the information, and then we'll get into the individual indicator data. Okay, so why end of year? Federal reporting requirements dictate what we have to collect and when for a current fiscal year. Depending on the data element and the timing of that, we have to collect information at different times. Some states have 5 or 6 collections throughout the year. We have managed to put everything basically into 2. Okay, so we call this one at this time of year the end of year data collection, and we collect several pieces of information from you, some of which you have to self-submit and others which we just pull from EdPlan. Okay, and every state is judged and scored for its compliance with that data submission mandate. We are judged on timeliness, we are judged on accuracy, and we are judged on completeness. So we have to look at you guys. The data is yours, really. So we want to make sure that your data is timely, accurate, and complete also, because it is good for you guys and good for us. The better data we have, the better decisions we can make. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about several different things. We're going to first talk about the district summary data page and what you submit through there, which includes the 45-day timeline or indicator 11, early childhood transition or indicator 12. We look at the CEIS participation. If you don't know what that is, you probably don't have to submit anything for that. And then personnel. Then we will talk about data that we pull straight from EdPlan, straight from student IEPs, and other information. So the exiting report, secondary transition report, early childhood outcomes, and discipline all come straight from EdPlan. We will also talk about certification process, and then give you a review, an update on advanced reporting, okay? And the reports you can use to verify your data. We'll talk about which reports we use to pull data and what you can use to verify that your information is correct, okay? So a few data quality notes as we get started. Please, please, please update the special education contact information in your LEA agreement in the grants management system. If you do not, we will not be able to contact you, okay? So check to make sure that the special education director or contact listed in grants management system is the correct person, especially if you have transitions this summer. Make sure that that information is updated. So we use that as our primary email source for all districts. We cannot maintain a separate email data set. So we use what you give to us in the grants management system, and we consider that official. So if it's not correct, then you may not be getting our emails or reminders about things that are coming out, okay? If you have changes in your site codes from this year or some that are happening over the summer, make sure, please, that you update those in EdPlan on the school page, okay? So if you click under the administration link, you can look at the schools and you can update each of their site codes. So we know every summer some schools change. You may change the range of grades, you may change some school sites, some closed, some open. Please update those site codes. Activate and review your Sooner Start referral records, okay? This time of year with all of this going on, it's a little bit different, we know, but we have records that have been referred to districts that are never ever opened and reviewed. If you have a kiddo coming to your district and if you've received an official referral, please activate that record and review that. And then if you need to close it and inactivate it, you can do that, but at least you have activated it and can review that. If you are missing exit reasons, okay, please contact us. The most likely reason is that the transfer, when it occurred, it just didn't add the exit reason, so you can add that from to the student's record. It may also be that you have duplicate exits and reentry events in the student history. And if that's the case, then you need to remove some of those and we can help you with that. Please also check your event timelines. If your parent consent is dated after eligibility, it will throw off some timeline counts in certain reports. So check that your parent consents, that your eligibilities are dated correctly in student histories, okay? We don't recommend that you go student history by student history for that information, but we do have some reports that you can look at to verify that those are entered correctly, okay? And feel free to contact us with questions about that. Okay, so some of the deadlines. We will pull data from EdPlan on July 1, okay? So what is the cleanup window? Your cleanup window is now until 9 a.m. on July 1, okay? You need to ensure, July 1 is Wednesday this year, you need to ensure that all of your data is correct prior to that date, okay? Certification is after that, and we want to make sure that data is correct prior to certification. If your superintendent certifies and the data is not correct, then it's a major process to correct that, okay? And we prefer not to do that. Once they certify, we assume that the data is all verified, accurate, and complete. Okay. So superintendents will have until July 15th in single sign-on to certify. We will go through what that looks like in a little while and how they can do that, okay? Stephanie, we'll get to your question in a little bit. Okay, so let's look at some district summary data information. So for those of you not familiar with this page, we collect certain pieces of information through this. This is how you self-report this information. Do not report any information in single sign-on. So those of you who have been around a while and have entered information in single sign-on, we do not collect any data in single sign-on. You do not need to enter student information. You don't need to import any information, nothing. Do not do anything in single sign-on. Instead, use this district summary data page, okay? It's basically a replication of what used to be in there. It is limited to administrator access. Okay, and you can access it through the green menu bar. So you click on that administrator dropdown, select district summary data, and it will open up a new page. You can save it and update it multiple times. So it will give you a little error saying it's not complete, but it will save. We will pull it only on July 1. So you can enter information tomorrow, you can enter information a month from now, and then you can finalize it on June 30th and you will still be fine. Zeros are required in empty boxes. If you have empty boxes, we will assume that it is not complete and you will be non-compliant. Okay. So please, please, please put zeros in any empty boxes. That's the only way we know that you have reviewed it and have verified that the information is correct. Incomplete pages are flagged as not timely and non-compliant. And so on your compliance matrix in your determination, you will be marked as non-compliant if this page is not completed on time. Okay, so please, please, please review this, enter the data. Every year we have a few districts who do not complete this page. We have to give them a call because we have to submit this information federally. And we'll bug you for a few weeks after July 1 to get that completed. And if it's not ever completed, then you are marked as non-compliant, certainly on your determination. Data will be missing and so forth. So it is a big deal, and we try to make it a big deal and make sure that you complete that. So we do give you some disincentives to not completing that page. Okay, so what is on that page? We collect several indicators. We collect, again, indicator 11, indicator 12, CEIS participation, and then personnel. So indicator 11, the purpose of this federally is to report a count of delays and the reasons for delay in completing initial evaluations once parental consent is given. So you will give us a count of students who have received initial parent consent for evaluation, and then you will tell us how many students had everything completed in a timely manner. Okay, there are two broad categories of delay. There's family reasons and other reasons. Other reasons include district reasons, such as you just ran out of time, you didn't have the personnel available, calendar issues, and late referrals from Sooner Start. Okay, a few changes before we look at what that page looks like. You need to report all consents, every single consent, initial consent you have received for the whole year, okay, whether or not the evaluations are due after March 13th, okay? So you will report all consents for the entire year, whether or not they are due after March 13th. If they are due after March 13th, you will still report them. You'll give us those lists of names. You will report that they were delayed, okay? But districts will not be liable for meeting those timelines in the fall determination if the consent was received within the 45 school days before March 13th, okay? Or after March 13th. So if you are still working on finalizing some evaluations and getting that information completed, and you just can't do it because you can't see the kiddos and run the tests and do all of that, you will not be liable for those, okay? But we do still need their names. We do still need those timelines and a mention of the reason for delay, okay? Because we will still have to monitor to make sure that those evaluations are eventually completed. We have not set a deadline for those yet. Reevaluation parent consents, you do not need to report those, only initial consents. Okay, so I know this is really tiny on your screens. This is the section for indicator 11, child find, okay? Once you are able to look at this slide yourself, you'll be able to see that. If you can open your district summary data page and walk through that with me, then you are welcome to do that too, okay? So the first box, this total referrals, this is the total number of initial parent consents you have received, okay? This will self-calculate. So it's a good check. As you enter data in the boxes below, this should equal the total number of initial parent consents that you have received for the entire year. Okay? So the first box you will enter is the number of evaluations completed within 45 days. These are your timely ones, okay? They've been completed. You have verified that they were done on time. The next two, okay, so under line number 2, for evaluations not completed within 45 school days, there are 4 lines listed, A, B, C, and D. A and B are family reasons, okay? The first is that the child changed districts prior to eligibility determination. If you have a kiddo who moves out of state, out of your district, after you've received consent, but prior to the completion of the evaluation, you mark that student here and you count that student here. Okay, so maybe you have 1, maybe you have 2, maybe you have 10 of those happen. You just write down the number in 2A of how many times that happened to you, okay? You are not liable to complete those. The new district will complete that information, will complete the evaluation, okay? You just need to report that. The new district will not report those, okay? So if you are a district that had a student move into your district in that special window of time after parent consent, but prior to evaluation, you will not report that student in this section, okay? From your perspective, you did not receive the parent consent, so you do not report it. You are liable to complete that evaluation, but you will not report it as here, okay? If the parent failed or refused to produce the child for evaluation, then you report that number here, okay, in 2B. This does not include whether the family refused to attend a meeting. This does not include if you know, they kept delaying a meeting. You can hold the evaluation, you can hold the meeting, you can make a determination of eligibility without the family present, okay? You can complete all that paperwork and do all of that. So that reason does not go here. If a family keeps putting off the meeting, you can get it done in a timely manner, okay? So we have folks also listening from Department of Ed, so if you have additional questions about that, feel free to put that in there and one of them can respond to that. But just know that you can complete that. You can complete it over the phone. You can, you know, notify them and make that determination in lots of different ways. Parents postponing that meeting is not a reason not to complete the evaluation and the eligibility, okay? 2C, parent refusal to sign consent for evaluation cause delays in evaluation or initial services. This should always be 0. We are trying to get it removed from this page. That's taking more time than we had hoped, but that should be 0. If a parent refuses to sign consent for evaluation, the timeline never starts, okay? So you shouldn't have to report any in this box. And then any other late evaluations will be reported in 2D. So give us that total number, okay? These are what we consider district reasons. And if, let's see, if you have late evaluations for any reason that is not due to 2A or 2B, then you will report them down below, okay? In box 2D. And then you will mark, all you'll have to check is one of those boxes to the right, which of those reasons applied, okay? Yes, this is where late evals due to COVID will go. You will count those under here, okay? You will count them as a 2D, as all other late evaluations. You will report them as a 2D, okay? For reporting all initial consents, no, do not report as 2A. You will report them as 2D, okay? They are late due to something other than a family reason, okay? You will report them as 2D. You will not be liable for them, but we do need to know that they are happening. When you report them, okay, the next step is to, for any students who fall under 2D, including COVID cases, as we can call them if you want, you will have to write all of those students' names and information on an Excel document. We'll cover this in a little bit. And provide us that information, and you can put the reason there as a COVID delay, okay? Let's see. So the next step on here then is to provide us with the maximum number of days beyond the 45th day needed to complete the most tardy evaluation. So let's say, you know, it took you an extra 5 days to complete an evaluation, you went to 50 days, then you would put 5 here. If it took you an extra 100 days, you would put 100 here, okay? We do not use this box for anything internally in the state, but federally we have to report this. So we only report one number federally, the highest number for the whole state. And then they just take that information, and I'm not sure how they use it, but they like that information, so we have to provide them to them. Okay. Let's see. Okay, a few notes on this. Again, only count initial consents and evaluation. Include your Sooner Start referrals in the counts if parents provide an additional consent for additional evaluations. Okay, if you are only reviewing Sooner Start information to determine eligibility, and you don't need to get an additional parent consent for evaluation, you do not need to report them under the 45-day timeline. Okay, but if you do get consent for additional evaluation for your Sooner Start kiddos, then you need to include them in this count also. Be sure to include all disabilities. A few years ago, we kept getting the question, does this include our speech kiddos? Yes, they receive special education services, so you must include referrals for speech services also. All disabilities, speech, autism, anything that you provide special education services, and you get consent for evaluation for special education services, including speech, make sure you count all of those. So this all other late evaluations, you must create a separate file for us that lists the names and STNs, dates of birth, okay, of students whose evaluations were late for a non-family reason, and the reason for delay. So you need to report your COVID cases here. You can use that reason. So if you let's say you signed parents signed consent on March 3rd, okay, and you had scheduled the evaluation for late March. Well, you can't complete it now, so it will be delayed, and you will just report that that student had a delayed evaluation and that the reason for that was the COVID school closures, and that's all we will need. So we will look at that and we'll just say, okay, we will not count this one against the district, and move forward. But we do need those names so that we can review later and make sure that districts are compliant with completing that eventually. Okay. So the max days, you just report the max days that you know. Okay. So if you had one that, or you could count it up until May 15th, that would be fine too. So, with that March 3rd example, you would count between school days between March 3rd and May 15th, and that would be your max days, and that would be fine. Okay. Any other questions on the 45-day timeline at this point? A lot of this information, you can refer to the COVID-19 FAQ information about some of the specific details about completing evaluations and such. That's beyond me. I just know what to report and how to report that. So for those types of questions, other folks will answer those. But for reporting purposes, you must report any students who were delayed, okay? And again, if it's a COVID reason, it's not 2A or 2B, it will be 2D, all other late, okay? Okay, so indicator 12, early childhood transition. This is, we report these that, to report the counts of eligibility outcomes for kiddos transitioning from Part C, Sooner Start in Oklahoma, okay, and the reasons for delay in completing those evaluations and IEPs. So the goal, of course, for anyone transitioning from Sooner Start is to have the eligibility and IEP in place by the 3rd birthday. That is required by law. So if you get a referral from Sooner Start, you must complete all of that information prior to the 3rd birthday. There are 2 broad categories of delay: family refusal and other reasons. Okay. And we'll get into those in a minute, but first, like with indicator 11, there are some collection changes for this year. Okay. You will report all referrals of Sooner Start kiddos, whether delayed or not, for the whole school year. Okay. So if you got a referral in early March, and their birthday is in May, and you do not think you will get the evaluation done and the IEP done by the 3rd birthday, then report that as a delay, okay? You will not be liable for meeting timelines in the fall determination if the child's birthday is after March 13th, okay? If you can get it completed, great. If you are just reviewing current Sooner Start information and there's a very clear eligibility and you don't need to conduct additional evaluations and you want to say, yes, this child is eligible, and you meet over the phone to develop an IEP and do all of that, you are welcome to do that. You can complete those. But if you feel that you cannot do a good job of evaluating the child at this time prior to the 3rd birthday, then just report that as a delay due to COVID delay, okay? So how are you notified of Sooner Start referrals? That's a big question. We can answer that at a, hopefully someone can write that into the chat, or we can answer that later by email. Okay, so on the district summary data page, indicator 12, early childhood transition, okay? It looks very similar to the indicator 11 information, but some of the reasons are a little bit different and some of the information that you will enter is a little bit different, okay? So again, that first box is the total number of referrals from Sooner Start. Okay, this is an auto sum, so check that number, make sure it matches your count of referrals from Sooner Start, because it will sum up the boxes below. Okay, that first box you will enter, determined not eligible. So number 1 is determined not eligible. So you get a kiddo referred to you, you determine they are not eligible prior to the 3rd birthday, and you write that number in here. You know, you may have 1, you may have 2, just enter that number. Second, number of students found eligible for Part B and IEPs completed by the 3rd birthday. So this is the number of kiddos who were referred to you and whose eligibility and IEP were completed on time prior to the 3rd birthday. So just enter that number there. The 3rd box, this is the only family reason we have, okay? If parents refuse consent for Part B services, or if they decline services, okay? So maybe you determine them eligible, but you know, the parents are just not interested in receiving public school services at this time, and they say, no, thank you, then you will report that number here, okay? This next box, okay, number 4. There are 2 reasons a student or a child from Sooner Start may come to you late, okay? 1, which you will enter in this box, line 4, is the number of children who were referred to Part C less than 90 days before their 3rd birthday. So there are some kiddos who receive a late referral to Sooner Start, okay? So maybe their pediatrician decides, you know, they're 2 years and 10 months old. And they say, you know, it's about time they need to be referred to Sooner Start. We really think this is an issue. So they get a very late referral to Sooner Start. If a kiddo comes to you like that they came to Sooner Start very late, then you would report that reason here, okay? So whether or not they were timely, if you received a referral for a child from Sooner Start, but they were referred to Sooner Start late, you would enter that number in line 4. I know it's confusing. Okay, the other reason is a late referral from Sooner Start, but they had been in Sooner Start for more than 3 months. So let's say a kiddo started Sooner Start services when they were 1 year old, and the parents just delayed and delayed and delayed, and then finally 1 month before the 3rd birthday, they said, you know what? Yeah, after all, we are interested in Part B services. So Sooner Start scrambles, you have to scramble, and you have to get all of that done before the 3rd birthday because the parents decided to delay their interest in receiving Part B services. In that case, you will report that way down, number 5 down below. This is not an excused reason, okay? So if you get a late referral from Sooner Start, that is not because the child came to Sooner Start late, you have to report it as a late, as a delayed eligibility in IEP, and it will not be excused, okay? You'll report that in this box here. So Sooner Start referrals, if you have questions about where you should report one of those, feel free to send us an email and we will answer that for you, okay? So this last line, line number 5, these are your other reasons. If for any reason the IEP was not completed by the 3rd birthday and it was not due to one of those things above, then you will report it here. And you must check one of those boxes to the right for why it was delayed. Okay, so was it due to LEA's failure to follow appropriate procedures? Was it due to breaks in the school calendar, staff not on contract, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, so just check that box, and then you will submit, again, a list of kiddos just like with indicator 11, and I'll go through that in a second. So just like with indicator 11 also, we do need the number of days past the 3rd birthday of the most tardy completion, okay? So if it was 1 day, you know, something happened, you weren't able to get it done on the 3rd birthday, but it was the day after, then the number you would put in there would be 1. If it took much longer than that, enter that number here. It's just the count of days past the 3rd birthday. Okay, so a few notes. A late referral from Sooner Start is not excused. That's the delayed reason number 5. But that is not the same thing if the child was referred at the last moment to Sooner Start. Okay, so if you have some confusion about those two, let us know and we will clarify for you. And we'll help you figure out which one it was. One of our reports does tell you if a child had a late referral to Sooner Start. Okay. So that again, IEP, if the IEP was not completed on the 3rd birthday, you must create a separate Excel file for us that lists the names, STNs, dates of birth, etc. of students who were delayed for a non-family reason and the reason for delay. Again, any child who is delayed due to school closures because of COVID, due to this whole time period, distance learning, etc., report those kiddos to us. Put down reason COVID if that's appropriate, and we will exclude those from your counts, okay? Upload this to the data test. We'll talk through that in a second. And send us that information, okay? Do not send anything by email, okay? No, Nancy, just on the spreadsheet, just write down COVID as the reason. That is perfectly fine. We cannot change that district summary data page to include that at this time. You know, they can't change the page that quickly for us, so it will just be listed on the spreadsheet. Okay. So how to submit those lists of students to us. If you have any delayed evaluations for indicator 11, any delayed evaluations in IEPs for indicator 12, you have to share that information with us. Do not send it to us via email, okay? That's a violation of FERPA because all of that information is personally identifiable. So we have created a document sharing tool in EdPlan. And it's basically a fake student. So in your student search list, enter the last name test, first name data, okay? Hit enter. You will see the student in your student list. The name is just data test. You know, have a made up ID, made up date of birth, etc. Select that student. Go to the documents page for the student. And you can upload your documents there, okay? So we would like you to use the naming conventions that we have shared with you, but if you know you just want to call it indicator 11 or indicator 12, we will get that information anyway. Please note that we do have templates for you that you can use, Excel templates. If you have a lot of kiddos, or even if you just have a couple, please use those templates. Those are on the end of year data collection page on our website. So you can download those templates and just use that. You do not have to create a new document. Please do not use PDF or Word because we transpose all of that into Excel, and if we can just copy paste the information from what you've sent us, it makes it a lot easier for us, okay? Any questions on data test? We can also share information with you that way. It's a great way to keep private information from possibly becoming public, okay? Which naturally we want to avoid at all cases, at all costs, goodness gracious. Okay, let's see, the templates again are on the end of year data collection on our website under the data page. Okay, so the next major section on this page is personnel. And the purpose of the personnel section, we have to report a count of FTEs of related services personnel and paraprofessionals to OSEP, and we submit this every November. So we have to collect the counts from you through the end of year data collection. Okay, so if you have any related services personnel, paras working in your schools who serve students on IEPs, you need to report those FTEs, okay? So the related services, we report fully certified or not. For paras, we report qualified or not. And this is what that table looks like, okay? So we report audiologists, SLPs, interpreters, etc. You can read that list, okay? Let me go through some details of this. So calculating FTEs only include personnel employed or on contract as of child count, October 1 of the previous year, okay? So if you had 3 SLPs working part-time in your district on October 1, and since then you have hired a new one because you need additional hours, do not count the new person. Only include those folks whose hours were, they were working as of last fall, okay? Count the total average hours served with students in IEPs by category. Round that to the 100th decimal. So, you know, if it's 0.02 or 1.27, those kinds of things. If a service provider works even 1 hour a week with students, 5 hours a month, 5 hours a year, please count the hours as a percent of FTE, okay? Because what this does, it gives the feds an idea of how many people are working. It allows them to develop information about the services that are being provided, the counts of services provided, that sort of thing, okay? We do not use it in the state really for much at this time, but it is a federal requirement to report this. We do have an FTE calculator in the same location under the end of year data reporting page that you can use to help you calculate that, okay? And it includes instructions and stuff, and we can walk you through that if you give us a call, and we can help you with that. Actually, no calls, we're not at work, but we can email. Okay, so a couple of examples. Let's say you have someone working part-time each week. The work week in your district is 35 hours. You have an SLP who works 20 hours a week. So the calculation for that FTE is just 20 divided by 35, okay? Let's say you have a full-time counselor. This is a tricky one, okay? Let's say you have a full-time counselor who serves 3 students with IEP services, 1 hour a week each, okay? So maybe they're doing additional behavior work. Maybe they're doing some work on, you know, emotions, or working on transition for secondary outcomes, okay? Three students, 1 hour a week each. That would calculate to 0.09. Do not count that as a full-time FTE for a counselor, okay? It's just the services that they provide above and beyond due to services needed because of the IEP. If you have a counselor providing services to a student with disabilities that the same services are the services are the same as for a general education student for all students, then you would not count that time, okay? So things like scheduling, things like going to a classroom and providing services, those kinds of things do not count unless it's over and above related services, okay? Let's say you have someone who is contracted for periodic work. And in this district, the work month is an average of 140 hours. The year is 1,080, okay? So for example, you have a psychometrist who works an average of 11 hours a month. So you would just take 11 divided by 140 to calculate that FTE. Let's say you have an interpreter that works 5 hours a year. You call them in only on piecemeal basis, okay, to provide extra services. So you would divide 5 by that 1080. Okay, Stephen, that's a great question. We will think about that. It kind of depends on how you were paid, okay? So if you have specific questions about these, feel free to give us a call. Again, this is something we report federally, so do the best you can. You don't need, you know, we get questions about this every year. You don't need to necessarily go back through a specific contract and count up every single hour. If you know that they were there approximately 2 hours a week, or you know, 3 hours a month, something like that, then you can estimate that and give us that number, okay? If you are not sure what your school year hours are, okay, accreditation has a worksheet with instructions to calculate the number of school hours for the year. So I think 1080 is the required, but maybe you have more than that and you want to make sure that you count those, then you can go to this page and get that information, okay? That's a sort of above and beyond, but if you want to do that, that is where you would find that information. Okay, if you are in a co-op or an interlocal, those groups must divide service provision among the districts. So if a co-op has a SLP and that SLP works for 5 different districts, but it's not even, then the co-op or interlocal needs to figure out where that SLP serves and how many hours should be aligned with each district, okay? So if you are, you know, and if you are a member of a co-op and you're not sure how many hours a particular SLP works for students in your district, you need to contact the co-op and get that information. Okay. Please be careful of counts in these categories: PE teachers, social workers, medical nursing staff, and counselors. Again, only count the percent FTE related to specific related service provision as outlined in an IEP. Okay, so a PE teacher, let's say all of your special ed kids are mixed in with the gen ed class for PE, they receive the same instruction as everyone else. You will not report a PE teacher at all, okay? Only report the amount of FTE a person provides, a service provider gives, based on the related service provision as outlined in an IEP, okay? So every year, one year we had, I think, 7 PE teachers from a district. So we gave them a call and said, do you really have 7 PE teachers providing services only to special ed students? And like, no, of course not. So that was changed to 0, okay? So just be aware of that. We will review those to make sure that there aren't any odd outstanding numbers, but please be aware of that and be careful of reporting those, okay? Vicki, I have no idea. Would your time be represented through T&E forms, documentation? I'm not sure. That would be a question for maybe finance. I'm not sure. We can look into that and see if we can find an answer for you on that. If you generally work a full-time day and your service providers work a full-time day and full-time week, then just report them as a 1, as full-time. Okay, paraprofessionals. And this is slightly different this year, and in fact, it's easier. You no longer have to split your kindergarten paraprofessionals into a 3 to 5 and a 6 to 21-year-old group, okay? Your 3 to 5-year-old age group, report only paras working with preschool students. In your 6 to 21-year-old age group, report paras serving students beginning in kindergarten, okay? So even though it says 3 to 5, if you have a 5-year-old in kindergarten who has a full-time para, that para should be reported in the 6 to 21-year-old age group, okay? If you have questions about that, certainly give us a call, okay? Okay. Voluntary CEIS student reporting. Okay. We received information this year from OSEP that comprehensive CEIS districts that have had to set aside due to significant disproportionality and provide CEIS through that process do not need to report students this year, okay, in these boxes. So only voluntary CEIS districts will report the number of students. So for each LEA, if you reserved funds voluntarily, you need to report the count of students who received CEIS services during the school year and the count of students who reserved CEIS at any time in the past few years and now receive special education, okay? We will, can help you with that. Fortunately, we have a list of districts, okay? There were only 10 who had voluntary CEIS set-asides this year. These are the 10 districts. If you are one of these, you need to give us student numbers. Goodwell, Monroe, and Wilson, if you are one of those, you did not claim any money against CEIS yet, okay? So you haven't made any claims, you haven't spent that funding. In that case, it's okay to report zeros, okay? So we will look at each of these, and most of you have done this in the past, so you're not new to this process of what to report. If you are not one of these 10, okay, then you will just have zeros in those two boxes, okay? So if you put numbers in there accidentally or you're not sure what you're supposed to do, we will basically ignore them because we only need to collect the students served for districts that have set aside that funding. Okay, any other district summary data page questions at this time? Stacy, I'm not sure what you mean by that. We'll need to, let's email that question, okay? Any other questions at this time? Okay, feel free to add them in chat as we go along. Okay, co-op question. Yes, that's exactly right. So whichever LEA is responsible for those students, you would report the services that that student receives based on percent FTE. So if you have, you know, an OT providing services to 3 different districts, but they're part-time and they, you know, in one district they serve 3 hours a week, in another district they provide services for 7 hours, you know, and of course, maybe the kids come to you, but they're divided among those districts, okay? Sample time and effort, we don't do anything about time and effort. That's another report that is not related to end of year data reporting. So you don't need to submit time and effort forms with your end of year data reporting. I think that's with either the LEA agreements or maybe the assurances, something like that. That would be probably a finance question. Okay, Rhonda. And we'll get that answered for you. Okay, so moving on to student level data. Okay, we will pull this information regardless of whether you look at it or not. Okay, so you need to make sure you look at it to make sure that it's correct. We are, you know, we pull state level reports, and districts that have errors, they are counted as errors for your district. So it's really, really important that you check and make sure that all of your data is correct, okay? So we pull directly from entries made during the IEP process and the discipline information, okay? We pull student level data for early childhood outcomes, exit reasons, secondary transition, discipline, and then consent to eligibility timeline, okay? And that last bit, you self-report your consent to eligibility timelines through the district summary data page, but we do have a report that we pull to use as a verification tool, okay? And we pull dates of finalized events. So it's really important that you check that all events are properly finalized and the dates are correct. Okay, so we'll start with indicator 7, early childhood outcomes. Annually, we have to report in our annual performance report the percent of students who improve due to early childhood. Okay, this is just 3 to 5 year olds. And we have a special page in EdPlan in the IEP process landing page called Early Childhood Data Collection, and it has 2 tabs. For now, we are just interested in the COSIV tab, the Early Childhood Outcome Summary tab. Okay. So on this tab, for those of you who are not familiar with it because you don't work with 3 to 5 year olds, the Childhood Outcome Summary form requires you to rate all 3 outcomes as compared to typical peers at entrance and at exit. Okay, so you need to rate their social and emotional skills, their cognitive and language skills, their physical skills, and so forth. Okay, they fall into those 3 categories there. And then you need to record whether progress was made. One of the federal TA centers, the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center, has a decision tree that you may find helpful. You can click on this link and use that to help you make decisions about where students should be and how you should rate those students. So it gives you that breakdown of what a score from 1 to 7 means. It's very useful, and it might be something that you want to share with your folks in your district if you haven't seen it before. But yes, just 3 to 5 year olds, not in kindergarten. This year you have to include through 6, okay? So we'll go through that in just a second. All students ages 3 to 5 should have entrance ratings if they have received or will receive services for at least 6 months. Okay? So if you have a kiddo coming in at age 3, put their entrance ratings in as soon as you can because they will likely be there for a while. If you have a kiddo coming in at 5, okay, this is where it gets tricky right now. Traditionally, we would have said you need to enter entrance and exit information up to the day they turn 6, okay? But next year, and this will be new, if a student will enter kindergarten in the fall, this coming fall, enter your exit reasons as soon as reasonable, okay? Regardless of age. If they're entering kindergarten, we want their early childhood exit ratings. If they're new to the program, you don't have to enter them at all because they will not have had 6 months of service. Okay, from now on, early childhood outcomes will only apply to preschool students. You will not have to enter them for 5 year olds in kindergarten, except for right now, because we need to close out those kiddos who have been receiving services. So if they're turning 6 this year, please enter those so that we have that information. Okay, so if the student has turned or will turn 6 prior to June 30th, you need to enter their exit ratings. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky. So this is one of the changes. Complete unfinished ECO ratings if they are due as you can. Okay, so maybe you have enough observational information that you can enter those ratings without seeing the child right now. You can conduct virtual observations and evaluations. You can talk to the parents, see how they're doing, so that you can rate those kiddos. Okay, but if you cannot complete them due to the distance of the child, you know, they're not in class, you can't see how they're doing, you're not sure whether they are improving at this time, complete those in the fall for the child's file, okay? We will not hold you liable for completing those by June 30th. And only ECO ratings that were due by March 13th will be monitored, okay? So if you have kiddos who have those ECO ratings due at this time, but you cannot complete them, that's okay. Do not just enter information in order to enter it. Enter only valid, reliable ratings and scores, observational information, okay? If you have questions about that, Destiny can help. We can help with that if you have questions about what should be entered and when. But next year, ECO ratings will be completed in late spring prior to the start of kindergarten for anyone who will enter kindergarten in the fall, okay? So that will be a change. You will no longer have to enter information for kindergartners. It will all be entered prior to the start of kindergarten. Okay. Any questions about indicator 7? ECOs after what date will not be monitored? ECOs that if a child's birthday, if they turn 6 after March 13th and you are not able to enter information for that child, you just cannot complete a valid observation and rating, then they will not be, you'll not be liable for completing those, okay? What this will do is really measure preschool improvement, true early childhood, rather than changes due to kindergarten. So by limiting this to just 3 to 5 year olds prior to kindergarten, we'll have a better picture for your district of how early childhood is going, okay? So the exiting report, okay? This report, we pull this every year on July 1 to collect the count of students who exited your districts and the reasons for exit. This feeds the indicator 2, or dropout calculation, and feds use this report for a lot of different things. So the reasons for exit that are included in the collection are listed here: dropped out and unknown, deceased, exceeded max age, graduated, transferred to another school, moved out of state, and then received a Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship or moved to homeschool, okay? Both of those two at the end are counted as return to regular ed. They are not counted as dropouts or anything. They are returned to regular ed, okay? If you have a student who is determined no longer eligible for special education, do not exit them, okay? They haven't left your district. They are just no longer eligible for special ed. So you complete the non-eligibility event. They will be removed from the special education list. They'll be counted as return to regular ed, but they are still in your district, so don't exit them, okay? Notes and reminders. Exit should be happening automatically based on your student information system entry. So ensure that students are exited correctly in your student information system. So if you see that an exit reason is off in EdPlan, go and check the student information system and make sure that the exit reason is correct there, okay? You can update the SIS. You can also update EdPlan if the exit reason or date needs corrected, okay? Sometime in the future, we hope those will be fully automated and you won't be able to change those, but at this time, you can still correct those in EdPlan. You can use unknown as a temporary exit status, but if it continues on to the exit report, it will count as a dropout. So resolve any unknowns that you have. And prior to June 30th, you need to make sure all of your high school students who are graduating with a diploma are exited from your student information system, okay, as a graduate. If they're not graduated by June 30th, then they may not count on your exiting report and you will not get graduation credit for them, and they may affect your dropout rate, okay? So you want to make sure that all of your special ed students who are graduating with a diploma are exited as such correctly by June 30th, okay? Do not exit other grades with this exit reason. So if you are, in 8th grade and you talk about graduating your school district, but they're moving to another district, for high school, don't graduate them. They will just be a transfer to another district, okay? If your IEP is current at the time of exit, you do not need to refinalize a student's IEP prior to June 30th. So if they exit on May 15th this year, which is one of the popular days for concluding school this year, and they are graduating, as long as the IEP is current on that exit date, you will not need to refinalize prior to that, okay? If not exited timely, will not count for dropout reports. Yes, so if your graduating students are not exited by June 30th, then they will not be of benefit for your dropout report, okay? And that's because they fall into the denominator for the dropout report, and you want those counted because it will reduce the number of dropouts and the impact of the dropouts on the overall students. Students who have exited but are not going to enroll in another district for the school year. But if they're starting school next fall and they'll be in another district next fall, then it'll just be a transfer, okay? Just keep them. If you think that a student right now, okay, if they have exited your district, but, you know, frankly, I wouldn't exit anyone in Ed Plan if you don't have to. It should be coming through your student information system, okay? It should be happening automatically. Do not exit from Ed Plan if you don't know where they've gone or what they've done. Your student information system should take care of all of that. And if a student enrolls in another district, let's say next fall, okay, but right now they're sort of nowhere, well, they're technically still enrolled with you, okay? Once they enroll in a new district this fall, it will be labeled a transfer and all will be resolved, okay? Yes, you can exit on that senior's day, May 7th, that will be fine. If the IEP is due, yes, that'll be fine, May 7th is the same. Yep. Yes, graduates will be exited. If you are not automatically getting students to exit for your district, then there's something wrong with your student information system. So we can talk to you about that. Okay. Any other questions about exiting? Okay. Again, we're happy to answer any questions by email and to help you look at those. At the end of this presentation, we will show you some AR reports and look at those. Let's see. Second, what was that question? So Catherine's question, I mean, it'll depend. If they enroll in the fall, I mean, right now, if they are exited and haven't transferred anywhere else, then they will be unknown and probably a dropout. Yeah. We'll have to just wait and see how that works. That'll be something we'll have to look into. There might be some things that we need to think about with that. And work on that, okay? I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll look into that, okay? Because if they, if they exit your district and never enroll anywhere else, then yes, they will be a dropout for your district, okay? But if they enroll somewhere else in the fall, we will review those and probably not, we wouldn't be counting them as a dropout very likely. It would depend. It'll depend. A lot of that is dictated by federal requirements. If they move out of state, then it's just you exit moved out of state. So that's different. Okay. Lots of these nuanced questions right now that are a little bit tricky, as I'm sure you know. Okay, indicator 13, secondary transition. So we report this federally because OSEP wants to know the percentage of students whose IEPs meet all 8 secondary transition requirements, and those are listed here, okay? They have post-secondary goals. The goals are updated annually and so forth. So we check this by measuring whether a student's IEP is finalized timely, okay? Since IEPs can only be finalized with transition information in place, if the child or the student is 16 years or old, 16 years old or older, or in 9th grade and up, then we look at IEP finalized dates. If it's finalized on time, then we assume that transition information is in place. We do have started doing some monitoring on goals and completion and other things like that, but for the purposes of this indicator, this is what we use, okay? So when finalizing an IEP or completing the summary of performance for graduates, please remind students to update all of their contact information for that post-secondary outcome data collection, okay? That's just a reminder about the indicator 14 survey that we make, okay? So we will pull a list of all students who meet the reporting requirements, meaning that they are 16 years or older or in 9th grade and up, okay, and their current IEP compliance. So on June 30th, July 1, if their IEP is not compliant, if it wasn't finalized on time, typically you would be considered to be in noncompliance for that student's IEP, okay? This year, here's one of the changes for this year. If the IEP was due to be refinalized after March 13th, okay, you will not be liable for meeting that timeline in the fall determination, okay? So let's say their IEP is due every year on April 30th. But this year you are not able to refinalize for whatever reason. You can note, and I'll say this for our program specialist folks, you can refinalize by phone. You can hold IEP meetings by phone, by Zoom, by other things. There are all sorts of qualifications on that. So make sure you review the COVID-19 FAQ document and recommendations, guidance, and so forth on our website. But you can complete IEPs. But if you somehow cannot, okay, we will not hold you liable for meeting those timelines in the fall determination, okay? We will still monitor to make sure that IEPs are refinalized in a reasonable timeline, okay, by some deadline to be determined later. But for this particular moment, if you can't get those done because of school closures and other things, you won't be liable for those this fall, okay? As of, I think it was last week I looked, there were about 4,700 students whose IEPs are currently out of compliance just for the upper high school age groups. And there would have been over 270 districts that would not be compliant on indicator 13 if we didn't make this accommodation to that, okay? So just know that it will affect most districts, but we are making the concession to the timelines, and you won't be liable for those if they're not done by the deadline, okay? We'll still pull all the data, we'll still count them, but you won't be liable for them. Okay, mean by refinalize that it's every IEP needs to be refinalized annually, okay? Discipline. Purpose for this report, we have to report all disciplinary removals for the entire state for students with IEPs, all ages 3 to 21. Okay, this feeds indicator 4, it feeds significant disproportionality calculations, and it feeds a lot of federal reports. Okay, so the type of disciplinary removals that you will report: in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, unilateral removals to IAES, and removal by hearing officer to IAES. Okay, in-school suspension is the trickiest. I like to call some of these de facto suspensions. If you, so IDEA says that we have to report any disciplinary removal when a student is removed from their regular placement for disciplinary reasons. And we report those as in-school suspensions, okay? So if you remove a student from their regular placement due to discipline, to the principal's office for an hour, or to the special ed classroom for half a day when it's not their usual placement, if you send them to the library for disciplinary reasons for half a day, anything like that, that is considered a disciplinary removal, and we have to report that as an in-school suspension, okay? So those are the trickiest because you don't always get that information from your principals, and we know that. But we need that information, and we have to report that information. If you have questions about what qualifies, definitely let us know and we will help you figure that out. We do have guidance on our website to assist you and your principals with that. But before we get there, your information, disciplinary information, is entered into one of two ways. This is the first way. This is the basic way. So if you just have a few incidents every year or just a few students, you can enter that student by student. So you go to the student's page in EdPlan and you click on discipline information, and you will enter the reason for removal, the type of removal, the date discipline started and ended, the number of days or hours, and so forth, okay? You will be asked to report whether services were provided during the removal. The second method of entering discipline is for larger districts or districts with lots of incidents, and that's through an automated upload into EdPlan, and we can help you with that. There's a template you have to use, 2 templates actually, to submit that information, and that is also on our website on our data page, but we can walk you through that, how to do that. Most larger districts who have been doing that know how to do that, but we can help you with that if you're interested. Okay, so the differences in the types of discipline. First, ISS, any removal from the standard educational placement to another in-school location for disciplinary reasons. Okay, so if their standard educational placement is the gen ed classroom and they are removed to another location for discipline, you have to count that as an in-school suspension. OSS, removal from school building for disciplinary reasons. Okay, so if they are sent home mid-afternoon for discipline, parents, I just can't handle it anymore, you got to take them home, that is an out-of-school suspension for disciplinary reasons. Now, please note, if you have a behavior plan in place and changing placement is part of that behavior plan to help that student manage their behavior, it is not considered a suspension, okay? So if it's in the IEP or a behavior plan as a standard method of coping with behavior, then you do not need to count it as a suspension. Okay. Drugs, weapons, serious bodily injury. It's either a unilateral removal, okay, by school personnel, or it's a hearing officer removal. Okay, so make sure that you determine which of those it is. Typically, school personnel will remove for drugs, weapons, or SBI offenses. Hearing officer is usually due to threats or injury. Not usually drugs or weapons. And I put in here, I won't read through all of this, but since you have access to these slides, I put some information from IDEA in the slides so that you can look at that about the differences in placement in IAES by school personnel, and the next slide is by hearing officer, okay? So appropriate interim educational, alternative educational setting, okay? There are some specific guidelines for that. It can't be more than 45 days, all sorts of things. So look at these carefully. And if you have questions, we can help you with that. Hearing officer, these are the requirements for removal to IAES by hearing officer. Again, you'll be able to look at these later in more detail. Here are a couple of examples though that we get questions about all the time. So let's say you suspend a student and then determine that an alternate setting is needed, okay? Or you, school personnel determines that IAES is needed, but they are in another location outside their usual placement until the time that that new placement, that new setting is determined, okay? If they are removed from the regular classroom until the student was placed, you have to count that as ISS. Then count each day or more after placement as the unilateral removal. Okay, they are 2 separate events. So whenever you have an IAES, unless the determination of the new setting, the new placement is determined immediately, you will likely have both an in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension, as well as the unilateral removal or the hearing officer removal, okay? So this is really important. Make sure you check these. If you have any IAES removals this year, then look at this and determine whether you need to also count ISS or OSS. Okay. Removals do have to be reported in a specific way. So this is regardless of your district definitions of suspension. So in your district, a principal may not call a removal to the principal's office for half a day as a suspension, but under IDEA, we have to count that removal as a suspension. So please be careful of that. we do have a document on our website called Special Education Discipline for Principals, okay? And please review that. It walks you through it. It asks you questions. It said, did this happen? Did that happen? And helps you answer those questions of how to report those specific events. Particularly if you have an unusual event, this document is very helpful. Again, auto upload is available. Tristan or Travis can help you with that. And then this is the website where the discipline help is located. Okay. Let's see, so any other student data questions? Anything about exiting or discipline or early childhood? Okay. Few other things. Let's see. So certification. Superintendents must certify between July 2nd and July 15th in single sign-on. Okay, so this is in, when they go to single sign-on, they select the Special Education Child Count System application. They can select district profile, and it will have a button there that says certify end of year starting on July 2nd. If they happen to, if that button is there prior to July 2nd and they happen to certify, we will clear it, okay? Because the data is not final until July 1. They cannot certify until July 2nd, okay? However, nothing will be in single sign-on. There will be no end of year data. There will be no end of year reports, nothing like that in single sign-on. It's all in EdPlan, okay? So that's really important to understand. They may go there thinking that they are certifying something in single sign-on, but there is nothing, no data in single sign-on for them to certify. Basically, they are certifying that the data in EdPlan in these reports is complete and accurate. So they will certify that personnel FTE counts are accurate, that the initial consent counts and causes for delay are accurate, and so forth, that your exit dates and reasons are accurate, okay? So they are basically saying in a separate location, because we can't do it in EdPlan, that all of the data that you submitted and we collect on July 1 is correct, complete, and final, okay? So how do you share this information with your superintendent if it's not in single sign-on? There are a couple of ways. Basically, for the district summary data page, you can take screenshots, you can select and print, you can take pictures and send it to them, or they can look at it over your shoulder when you have it open. Okay, although these days you shouldn't be within 6 feet of them. So do what you can, send them the information. Student level data reports. You can produce digital copies of all end of year reports in EdPlan. Okay, in advanced reporting, you can submit them as, you can make copies as PDFs, you can make copies as Excel documents. Okay? And then you can share those reports with your superintendent. You can also, I know districts that just summarize all of the information and provide it to them in a separate summary report, and that's possible too. So whatever you think your superintendent wants or needs, provide them that information. Sometimes, I know this happens, sometimes they just trust you guys, and if you say it's complete and accurate, then they'll just certify without looking at anything. If that's the way they want to operate, great. That's up to your district. But if they do want to look at everything, then you will need to provide it to them, okay? Because they won't be able to see it unless they are active in EdPlan and look in EdPlan themselves. Okay. So again, some resources. These are on our data pages. So we have some guidance documents. We have an end of year data collection manual. It is from last year, but it's mostly still complete and accurate. We have a discipline walkthrough and decision tree document that's SPED discipline for principals. We have guidance on early childhood environments and outcomes. We also have the non-compliance templates, the discipline upload templates, and then we have that personnel FTE calculator. Okay, all of that is on our end of year data reporting page or just our general data page. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, so we are going to go over time. We're going to go past 3 o'clock. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to switch Zoom locations. So if you are not absolutely positively confident in advanced reporting and use it every day and really understand the reports and everything, I recommend that you get on this next Zoom call so that we can review those reports with you. Do not use, before we go on to the next meeting, okay, do not use the scheduled reports on the report page. These are all out of date. They're no longer accurate. We don't update them, nothing. I know some of you still use them periodically. Do not use them for end of year, okay? We will use advanced reporting. Lisa, we have recorded your participation, and as long as you wrote down your district, you will get credit for this. Remember, it's 1 bonus point for attending both trainings during the year. It's not a separate bonus point for each. So, but you will get credit for attending as long as we know your district. Okay, so I will hang on here for a couple of minutes, but then we will go to the other Zoom location. Feel free to log out of this one and go to the other one. That is the call-in number if you just want to listen by phone, or you can write down this link, enter this link into, and let me copy it to chat so that you can copy paste it. Let's see if I can copy. I'm not sure. Go to that site, okay? Let's see. Thank you all for getting on, and I will see you shortly in the next location. So let's get started. So advanced reporting. So we have a system in EdPlan called the Advanced Reporting System. This is what we use to create reports, update reports, fix reports. Do not use the scheduled reports on the reports page, okay? These are old, these were created several years ago. They are not kept up to date. Sometimes they incidentally have correct information, but we do not use them, and we don't recommend that you use them either, okay? So instead, use advanced reporting. To get to advanced reporting, open EdPlan, okay? Click on the reporting drop-down menu, and at the bottom it says advanced reporting. It will open a new tab, okay? It'll open a new tab in your browser, and it will look very different from EdPlan. It looks like a series of boxes, folders, fairly rudimentary, not very fancy at all. But when you open that, to get to the end of year reports, so click on the OK Reports folder, then the OK Reports library, then the end of year folder, okay? There's a child count folder, assessment reports folder, end of year. There are several different folders, but for our purposes, to access the reports we'll talk about now, open the end of year folder, okay? So the reports we have in there, we have several. We have an early childhood outcomes report, early childhood transition, that's for the C to B transition, eligibility timeline, exiting, secondary transition, discipline incident, and a discipline report. Okay, we do have a document on our website, it's again from 2019, about using the AR reports. This is the link to that, but you can access that from the data page also. It's just a manual on using advanced reports, and it will tell you the columns and the fields that are in there, what each report does, and so forth. So if you're really want a lot of detailed information, I recommend that you go and look at that document, okay? So this, just going to briefly cover what each of the reports looks at, what is included in that with some of the guidelines for that, and then how we use that information. Okay. So the Early Childhood Outcomes Report will list all students who will have had at least 6 months of service and who turned 6 before June 30th. So this report still uses the age of 6, okay, for this current school year. Next year it will change for 5-year-olds, but we haven't made those changes yet. It displays entry and exit dates, ratings, improvement status. It shows their dates of birth, and all of that kind of stuff. So you can look at all of those kiddos. There are 2 tabs in this report. The first tab shows all information for all kiddos. You can look at that and see missing information. But the red flags tab, okay, will show issues with incorrect or missing information. So students on the second tab may not be counted. If students are missing information, if they're missing ratings, those will be counted against you, unless, of course, they were due after March 13th. Okay. We do use this for the Indicator 7 calculation. We pull this report at the state level and run all the calculations, aggregating it down to the district. Okay. So we use this for a state report for federal purposes, and then we use it to give you your district information. So definitely take a look at this report. If you don't look at this report, we will assume that everything in it is correct and complete when we pull it. So just know that we will not wait for you to fix it. You need to fix it now, resolve it. If you can't resolve something, give us a call. Sometimes STNs are an issue. Sometimes other things are an issue. We can help you fix some of that. I keep saying give us a call. Unfortunately, we can't talk on the phone right now, but we will gladly email with you. And through our system, we can set up video calls. We can set up document sharing, screen sharing, that kind of stuff. So we can very easily schedule a meeting with you to share screens so we can look at what you're looking at and those kinds of things. So feel free to schedule something like that with us. We'll be happy to help. Okay. So that outcomes report just lists all students who fall into that age group and whose outcomes are either complete or incomplete. Okay, so take a look at that. The next report is the Early Childhood Transition Report, and this is for you to use. We do not use this for Indicator 12 calculations. So if you see errors on there, if you see red flags, if you see issues with student information, this is for you to verify that these students' records and their timelines are being met. We do not actually use this because it doesn't pull complete information for everything. So for example, there may be a kiddo on the red flags report that shows that something hasn't been done on time, but you know that that student was a true referral. Well, we can't see that on the report. You know, whether or not it was a true referral or not, you know, based on your documentation, but we can't pull that information to the report. So as long as you know what's going on with one of those kiddos, it's okay that they're on that tab. You don't have to try to remove them. So it will pull students who turn 3 during this reporting period, meaning this current fiscal year, this current school year, and it will display whether those students have eligibilities and IEPs done by their 3rd birthday. It will tell you the date of referral to your district. It will tell you the whether or not the student was referred late to Sooner Start. It will give you lots of helpful information to help you track those kids' status. And it's actually a good report. Some of you earlier were wondering whether, how do I know if a kiddo has been referred to me? This is one report that you can use to find those students, okay? It should pull any student who is referred to you from Sooner Start. We know that there are a couple of issues with it that we're still trying to work out. So once in a while, it seems that a student doesn't pull over to this, but it has to do with something on their student history that we're still trying to resolve, okay? So if you have questions about kiddos on this report, feel free to contact us and we can help you work those out. Okay, eligibility timeline report. Again, this is a report for you to use to make sure that you are tracking your kiddos correctly for initial consent timeline, okay, between consent and eligibility. So this report pulls all students who had initial parent consents between 4/15 of last year and June 30th of this year. Okay, so if they had an initial parent consent, they will show up on this report. Now, what that means is that there are some kiddos in your district who should not have initial parent consents because they have been on an IEP for years and years. So someone went in, did a parent consent, labeled it as an initial, and it shouldn't have been. They will still show on this report. And that's one of the reasons why we don't use this report for anything other than validation and verification. You can use this to track your kiddos, track your eligibilities, track your consents, and then self-report that information to us on the district summary data page, okay? But this is something you can use to help you monitor your students. It gives a count of school days between initial parent consent and the eligibility determination, if your event timelines are correct, and if your school calendar is correct, okay? So it's based on your individual school calendar. If your school calendar is not correct, then the count of days will not be correct. So make sure your student calendars are correct, okay? Any questions about that report? Okay. The exiting report. So this is what you see is what we will pull. This pulls students who exited your district during the reporting period. Okay, we pull this at the state level, and it shows every student who exited districts. Okay, it will show the most recent student exit date and the student reason. If a student is missing an exit reason, you need to go in and fix it. Okay. It will show the red flags tab will show students with missing information. Some kiddos, if they are on the red flags report, that means that they will not be counted in the exiting report. Okay, so it may mean that the exiting report, we are required to report race, gender, all sorts of things in that report federally. So we pull all of that information for that federal report. Some of it won't be relevant to you and your district, and we don't use it for district purposes, but we have to report it federally. If any of that information is missing, then we don't include those students in the exit report. And if they're not included in the exit report, they will not count toward the calculation for indicator 2. Okay. So if you have red flags that you cannot resolve, contact us and we will help you with those. Okay. But this, these reports we have created to help you fix some of these data quality issues, to make sure that everyone is aware of what we see, of what we pull, and what you can see and fix, okay? Everything can be fixed, almost everything can be fixed at the district level in the student information system or in Ed Plan. There are a few things that we have to fix here at the state level through the WAVE and some other things, but for the most part, you should be able to resolve almost all of those red flags. Okay. It may mean, for example, that the student's record needs to be reactivated. If that's a case, let us know and we can help you inactivate it correctly. If you have, there's this weird thing in Ed Plan, okay? If you have 2 exits in a row with the same date and a re-entry there also, then the exit reason will not show. So you have to delete some of those events in the student history, and you may or may not have permission to do that. So give us a call if you're finding that that's an issue and that's some trouble. Ed Plan school calendar starting April 6th. We make those school days, I believe so, after April 6th until the day that you are concluding your distance learning year. Yes. But someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, Greta. Our program specialists know that better. Sooner start referral on a child turning 3 in July. If they turn 3 after July 1, they will be counted for next year. Okay, so you can do that. I mean, they won't be counted for this school year anyway. They'll be counted for next school year. So you can resolve that after July 1. Okay, and you won't report on that child. Only report 3-year-olds that turn 3 this current year between July 1, 2019 and June 30th, 2020. And that's true for indicator 11 as well, child fund. Okay, secondary transition report. This polls students who are at least in 9th grade or 16 years old. Red flags tab shows students with IEP compliance issues. So this is a very straightforward report. It just lists the students, it lists the date of the IEP and whether they are in compliance or not. The red flags will mark an X in a column, whether or not they are going to be compliant by June 30th or whether they are currently non-compliant. So check that. If they, basically they will be non-compliant if their IEP is not refinalized timely. So you'll need to look at those. Even if you complete the IEP prior to July 1, if they do not turn 3 this year, you will not report them. You'll report them next year. District had non-school days between April 6th, May 15th. Change those to school days. And if they're non-school days, if they are considered a non-school day, then you keep it as a non-school day. Okay, we do pull this and use this for indicator 13. So any records, any students whose IEPs are not compliant, meaning they haven't been refinalized by the due date, then they will be considered non-compliant unless they fall into the special COVID-19 timeline window, okay? Then we have the discipline incident report. This pulls students who have had at least one discipline event entered or uploaded to EdPlan, okay? And it's incident by incident. So you may have one student listed 10 times if they've been removed from the classroom that many times, okay? It displays all distinct discipline events for each student. It lists the type and it lists the days. So you can look through there and verify that the information is correct. Now, if you see that for little Johnny, it says he was removed for 5 days during the school year for a particular out of school suspension, but you know he was only out of school for 3 days. This is where it gets complicated. You're going to have to go into Johnny's discipline record, delete that event and re-enter it. There's no way to correct an event that's already been entered, okay? So if you need to correct the number of days or the type of removal, anything like that, you will have to delete the event and enter a new one. So you need to make sure, you need to be really, really careful that all of the events that you enter are entered correctly the first time, because it's a really big hassle for you to correct those. And this is why if you choose to do an auto upload of discipline information, you want to look through that as carefully as possible before you upload it. Make sure every single data element is correct, because if it's not, you could be uploading 20, 30, hundreds of incorrect records, and you would have to go in and delete every one of them and correct everyone. We really don't want to have to do that, and you really don't want to have to do that. That would be such a mess. So make sure all information is correct the first time when you enter it. It's really, really important to save you guys time and effort later on, okay? So that incident report, you can check that information, make sure it's all correct for every incident. The second report is the report we pull, and it pulls students who have had at least one discipline event entered or uploaded to EdPlan. And it's each student is listed only once on the report. So let's say Johnny had 5 different events during the school year, different removals. It would list all of the days and types for Johnny in one row. So rather than 5 rows for each event, it would be 1 row with all of the information in there, okay? So it tells you how many days by each type of event, days disciplined, and so forth. And we use this to calculate indicator 4. So it's a good check. You can look through that, make sure the information in there is correct, and so forth. Change where you. It's possible that we could change something in EdPlan to edit discipline, but that would be a major change and probably cost quite a bit that I don't know if we have the development hours for that or anything, but that's something we can add to our list of things to consider, absolutely. Because it is a huge hassle if you have to correct a discipline event, okay? So those are the AR reports, okay? So we, what kinds of questions do you have about those? how to use them. We have tons, say tons, not literally tons. We probably have 50 other reports in advanced reporting in AR that you can use for various things. We have timeline compliance reports, we have child count reports, we have all sorts of things to help you manage your student data, and we highly recommend that you get in there and use it on a regular basis to monitor your students and manage all of that. And we're glad to help you work through those. If you're having trouble getting to it or don't understand how to use a particular report, we're glad to help you with that, because we really value those reports and we use them all the time, and we want you guys to use them too. Okay. Back to eligibility. Will a student, okay, so the eligibility timeline report, yes, she will probably show on your report, even if the consent was gathered at another school, but you will not report her as an initial consent on your indicator 11, okay? And she will probably show as out of timeline, depending on when you got the evaluation eligibility completed. You know, sometimes when a student moves from another district, they move right at the last minute, and so you know, the previous district had scheduled the evaluation and the student moves and you don't know they're on an IEP, you know, that they've had a consent for a while. And so it takes a little bit of time to get everything resolved and fixed. And then it looks like they're out of timeline. You are not liable for that 45-day timeline if a student moves districts in between. Okay, you just need to get it done as soon as reasonably possible. Okay. Okay, so one thing, we're going to open this up to all types of questions at this point. If you have a question, please try to make sure it goes to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see it. But otherwise, I will try to review some of these. Thank you, Amy, for reminding me about that. Okay, so Claudia writes from Lawton, our district has made May 8th the last day of school. Assuming this does not make any difference in the May 13th date being used by OSDE for data reporting, except for calculation of 45-day. So it's not May 18th, it's March 18th, okay? So anything after March 18th will not be held for timeline compliance for districts. So March 13th being that day before spring break, okay? If a child moves into our district with the parent consent, but we completed the initial evaluation, do we count that student? The sending district will count that student. Okay, you do not count a student who comes in who already has an initial parent consent. That student is counted in the sending district. If a timeline for an IEP is overdue because of the move from another school to us, is that, no, we don't report timelines for IEPs, only for initial consents to eligibility, okay? So if the IEP is overdue because of a transition between districts, you just need to get that done. It may be a monitoring issue depending on how long it takes you to look at that, but we don't report any data on that or collect any data on that for reporting. Okay. Did we clarify if SLPAs, OTAs, and PTAs are calculated in FTE as certified? Yes, you can count them. Okay, if they are providing the services that an SLP would provide, you can count them as a related services provider. Okay. I don't know that question. That may be something that needs to be repeated. Greta, clarify Jessica's question about following the behavior plans and reporting that. I'm not sure what that is. Is the calculation for FTE changed since the number of hours per year has changed due to the COVID end of year data change? Ooh, that's a great question. Yes. I would just use, boy, oh boy. I would use your standard school year and not try to change it for the COVID end of year change, because up until March, hours were standard. Most related services providers and paras are going to be serving about the same number of hours a month on average, or would have through the whole year. So I would just maintain the original hours counts. That's a great question. Okay, if removal from school is in the behavior plan, then it does not have to be reported. Correct. Okay. Does it not count against the 10 days of removal from school for remediation? I don't believe so, but I'm not sure. That's a question for someone else. Let's see. So yes, if, let's say let's say a student has in their behavior plan that whenever they have, when they need to, you guys are gonna laugh at me because I don't really know exactly what I'm talking about because I don't write IEPs, but let's say you have a behavior plan where the student can go to the library to calm down, to prevent or to respond to behavior issues that might otherwise be considered discipline. As long as it's in the behavior plan or in the IEP, it does not need to be counted as a disciplinary removal, okay? Now, if you're sending kids home every day because of disciplinary issues and that's in the behavior plan, you might want to rethink that, but that's another type of question. You can find the PowerPoint on the end of year data collection page on our website. Should we go ahead and complete early childhood exits for those students who will be entering kindergarten next year, or wait until next year? If you have enough information and you have made enough observations that you can be confident in how you are rating a child who has completed preschool this year and is entering kindergarten in the fall, you can enter that information now, or you can wait until the fall to enter it. So let's say you have a 4 or 5 year old, they will enter kindergarten in the fall. You saw them it wouldn't be a couple weeks ago now, 4 weeks ago, and you're confident in your evaluations of their skills in the 3 outcome areas and you want to enter those ratings, you can do that, okay? And, use the date of rating. One thing you need to be careful of, though, is that if the student did not receive at least 6 months of service, then that student will be dropped from the report entirely. So if you want them to count toward your outcome scores, then you need to make sure that you wait until they have had at least 6 months of service before you enter their exit ratings. Okay. Can we certify end of year data if the district had 504s that are red? Or we don't, 504s do not affect end of year data reporting for special education at all. They're a different law. Under ADA, we don't use that information at all. So a student with a 504 will not inhibit or affect end of year data collection at all. If you had registered for the end of year webinar on April 21st, prior to this date being offered as a webinar, no, you do not need to attend the second one. So next week, the 21st and 22nd webinars are going to be repeats. They're actually going to be shorter webinars. We're going to condense the information because this was used to replace in person. So next week's webinars will be the exact same information. You do not need to attend. You can unregister to open space for others to register, but otherwise you can just ignore it and not participate. Okay, let me show you this. Here's our contact information. Okay, please do not call. None of us are at our work phones, okay, and they are not, the state IT system has not transferred our work phones to our home phones. So please email. We do check our voicemail periodically, but it's much better if you just email us. Set up a time when we can call or do a video chat. That's probably easier. Then we can share screens and look at information together if we need to. If you want to look at an AR report in a specific case, we can do that. Okay, feel free to email any one of us. Travis, Tristan, and I are the data team here, and we are happy to help. Are there any other questions? So when you go to be more specific about finding the PowerPoint, you go to the state special education website, then you click on Part B and data, click on the data page, and then click on the end of year data collection. Okay, so again, that's the OSDE special ed website, Part B, data page, and then the end of year data collection link. Okay. And on that end of year data collection link, that's where almost all of these resources are. The discipline is on the main page. Okay. Any other questions? If not, feel free to email us at any time and we will be glad to help. Thank you all for participating. I know it's quite a unique time of year.